Hello and welcome to the stream. I'm Video Game Pianist. In this stream, I'm going to work on memorizing my Super Mario 3D World transcriptions. So in the previous streams, I've been learning those transcriptions. Now I'm going to focus on the memorization aspect because when I make a YouTube video of me playing these pieces, I want to play them from memory. So I'll begin with the pre-battle from Super Mario 3D World. You see the music up here. And the way I do it is that I first break the piece up into different sections. So oftentimes when you practice a piece, you don't want to start from the beginning. You want to start like in the middle, the end, or somewhere that you want to work on, but don't start at the beginning all the time. So for this one, there's a parallel structure here in the piece. It begins in C sharp and then goes to E, and then it repeats, it loops back. Hello Joshua Wall, hello T-Pad. So I'm going to start on the latter half of the piece where it begins in E, and it starts here. This is on measure 7. So there I'm going to memorize this music from the second section. So it begins. So I'm going to try to memorize that part there. One way is to find some musical understanding of why each note is there. If you can explain to yourself logically why each note is there, then the energy you spend trying to figure out why those notes are there will help you memorize the music, because you're developing relationships between the notes and you're forming memories and thoughts and viewpoints about each note, and that helps you memorize the music. So one way to think about this is, why is the music going to E? Why is it not just staying in C sharp? I mean, it could just stay in C sharp, but I feel that when it goes to E, it's contrasting C sharp with E is like heightening the emotion, heightening the anticipation of the battles. This is called pre-battle. And so when it goes to E, it goes up another notch of anticipation. And here, there's this melody is, these notes, you have to imagine that these notes are continuing. So, hello Darren W. So in measure 8, there's a second voice here. So actually, that voice seems to be a continuation of those 8 notes from the previous measures there. So, and also, we talked about in the past stream about music that's greater than it can be played, meaning like the mind can idealize the music and the body can try to reach the idealization, but it can never reach it fully. And great music has that capability. So in this case, the atmosphere has to do with the rhythm in the left hand and how that left hand is expressed. Now, if we look at the left hand here, it's just the same note going here and then an octave higher and then back down. And it may seem really mundane. On paper, it looks just like these notes go bouncing up and down like that. However, the way we use our imagination and the way we conceptualize a piece and the way we connect it to the video game has a huge influence on how we interpret this. So that includes the left hand. In my opinion, how the left hand is played has more of an impact on how the right hand is played. So here, for the left hand, we have to think about the picture, the sound picture of this, because this melody, this rhythm can also evoke certain like magic and mysteriousness, and yeah, something that's magical and mysterious and exciting. So we can figure out how this quality of the left hand can be. So is it like the dun dun dun, or so depending on how the left hand is played, which is influenced by our sound picture of the left hand, we're going to evoke a different atmosphere of the music, and that atmosphere is created by the left hand. So let me think about the type of atmosphere for the left hand here, because it's really up to your imagination. My imagination, what I envision for this piece. And again, it goes back to great music sounds better than it can be played. So I can have a sound image of this piece overall and try to create that on the piano using my body, but may not reach that 100%. So let me think about how this left hand should go here. Yes, Zach Susser, the 3D World Music is just hyping me even more for the release on Switch. Yes, I read about the news of the Super Mario 3D World being released on Switch. That's exciting. I'm still in the middle of Super Mario 3D World beating the game. I'm in Bowser World now, and those levels are tough. And I try to get those green stars, but the challenges that they pose, it's really tough sometimes. So I'm just trying to make it to the level. Because so depending on the technique you're using, depending on the sound picture, you're going to adapt the technique of playing the left hand to different aspects. So how you touch the keys is going to have an impact on how the left hand sounds. So do you hear the difference when I play it with my right hand and when I play it with my left hand? So there's a slight difference. If you hear it, I'm trying to go for that certain difference of the sound. But it makes no sense to try to achieve something with the technique and body if you don't have the sound picture first. If you don't see how you're trying to reach that sound in your head, that sound that you envision, because it's that's the process, at least my thinking routine, my routine of approaching music, my process here. So and so that's the second half. So I'm going to try to memorize that. And okay, so now I've realized this repeats twice here. So I'm making these analytical observations to help me memorize the music. So I realize this repeats twice. So now that helps me make a mental note to memorize that part more easily. And then after the second iteration, then the G sharp, this melody enters here. So if I had two hands here, it would be ideal, and I would be able to prepare this note much more freely. But because my hand is here, I have to prepare this G sharp without the time and space to do this. So in a way, you have to imagine that one part of your hand is actually preparing this. So you have to visualize that your hand is actually doing this when actually your hand is just here. So it's hard to explain, but that's many times on piano you have to trick yourself to be able to do some technical aspects. And then here is another tricky aspect, because I have this B tied, but then I also have the B as a staccato note in another voice. So what that means is that after I play this B, I shouldn't play staccato, because that's going to negate the B as a half note. and the be tied to the next measure as well. So it should be like that rather than. Hello, me. Hello, Sebastian. Welcome. Yes, the Switch is really enticing. It's I mean, I've read that Nintendo are coming up with another system, right? It's like Nintendo's already working on another system other than the Switch. So I might just skip getting a Switch and get the next system that comes after the Switch. We'll see. All right, so another aspect I mentioned before is that when you're learning music, your brain is picking up the sounds, right? It's just it's learning whatever it hears. So ideally it's better if you learn music that's slower, if you play it slower, because then your brain can pick up the notes in a more organized fashion. So I'm just doing this for the sake of my brain, because I know I can play with my hands, but it's more for the brain to be able to soak in the information more readily, right? So because if you're in the heat of the moment, like performing, you want the memorization to be really solid. Like if there's like a cough in the audience or like a flash of a camera, you can still rely on your memory to recall the music and not to get distracted. Like I know some professional chess players that they've trained themselves to the degree that they're not affected by extraneous noise, and they can still calculate a position and play a position that's really critical. And so chess players, if they can do it, then certainly musicians can do it. And then after that, it's because this beat actually resolves to E, because the melody is because that's the melody. And actually sometimes it's helpful to isolate that melody, hear that on its own as well. So now that's the melody, and that's actually that melody that's like waving in the air. It's kind of like it's based on the first, fifth, and the eighth scale degree of this key here. So it's kind of ambiguous tonally because it's not defining itself as major, minor. There's no third here. Well, it's actually a third here, but this actually comes out to be E dominant seventh chord as well. So sometimes if you scrunch the notes together and put it into one chord, you can hear the harmonic implications here. And then here, this last eighth note is also and maybe staccato, but it's also part of the half note here. So releasing that would actually be in agreement with a half note. And then it's also important when you do the repeat is to go actually to over the bar line to back to the next measure, because if you stop here and then if you try to connect that to the beginning, there may be a gap because you're not connecting the end to the beginning. You're just stopping the end and then going back to the beginning. But if you practice over the bar line, then you have that connection there. And that actually informs my fingering, because if I didn't know there'd be a G sharp there, then I wouldn't have switched the fourth finger on the repeated E's here. I would have just done like 1, 1, 3, 2 or something. And then see, now it's helpful to come up with some sort of story and some sort of understanding again why the notes are there. Like try to find rationalization, try to rationalize why the notes are there. Like why is this an E sharp? Why is it not an E? So it's an E. One way to say that is anticipating this chord in measure 2 in the first measure here. That's one way to rationalize the E sharp. Another way is that just the E sharp makes it a little bit more jazzy sounding rather than this E and the E sharp makes it a little more jazzy sounding rather than E and E. That doesn't sound bad at all, but I think the E sharp, it's like adding a little bit of Tabasco sauce on scrambled eggs. It gives it that little kick, a little spice. And then again, I changed this because I want to avoid this jump here. It's really impractical for piano. It's pretty annoying, this jump. Even though I wrote it myself, I transcribed what I heard, but these are several voices that I'm transcribing, and so it's just, I try to avoid this when it gets suddenly difficult like that, because it really interrupts the overall flow and like in the zen of the music, and just it can ruin the mood of just having to deal with this. Because if you get in the mood and you're like, okay, the music's fun, but then suddenly, okay, if you jump here, then it completely destroys the mood overall and the character and the atmosphere of all, and it's just not fun. And I don't know if anybody really notices that. That's the thing. Like you can work really hard for something and then nobody will notice it. And it's, I mean, that's just one aspect of the reason, but that's just much more easier to do. So going back to measure 7 here. So that's the second half there. So now I'm going to play it through a few times slowly, just for my head to, my brain to learn it the way it should be sound. Like I want to play it exactly how my brain wants to remember it. And that's the second half. So now I'm going to go back to the beginning, and now I'm going to learn the first half. So first, let's see the comparison. If note for note, it's the same, because sometimes there can be two passages that are very similar, but there's one note off. And that occurs a lot in Schubert sonatas, and sometimes in Mozart recapitulations, in the exposition to the recap, and same with Beethoven. Sometimes they're like different notes that just one note is off. But when I transcribe this, I try to not do that. I try not to add any discrepancies between the patterns, because learning the music itself, I think that's just enough energy for now, at least. Maybe later if we want to make it even more artistic and add like a different note, but then there has to be a reason behind it. It shouldn't just be to make a performance life more difficult. So already there's no this of this in the first half, but I could add it in, or I could check the recording and see if it's there. But for now, I'll just play it like this without anything on measure 2, the first 2 beats for the right hand. popular in Japan in the past. I received fan mail from Japan, from people in Japan, and that was a lot of fun. Yes, I mean, I met Koji Kondo and Shigeru Miyamoto, and I performed in Tokyo in 2009. And I know there are people that uploaded the Super Mario medley video, and it seems like they're from Japan, and that's really cool. That yeah, I know that people really enjoyed the Super Mario medley video in Japan. Actually, one time I was invited to be on a television show for Japan, but I didn't. I was like, I had other things on my schedule, so I couldn't do the show. And it was really, it seemed to be like a really fun show. Like the shows on YouTube, like these Japanese shows, like they add sound effects. It seemed to be that type of like fun show. But unfortunately, I couldn't do it because I had other responsibilities and obligations. Also, one aspect of my experience is to be aware, or more super aware, of where the tritones are, because when there are these tritone transitions, sometimes it's really hard to memorize, because first of all, going from a tritone on the piano can be a little bit awkward, and also it's just the shift in tonality is so sudden that sometimes it's harder to memorize those shifts, like especially when it goes from C sharp to G natural here. So it's important to be aware of where those tritones are, especially in like popular music or video game music, where the tritones are often used as a transition from one section to another. Like oftentimes in Banjo-Kazooie music, there are all these tritone transitions, and that was challenging to memorize Banjo-Kazooie music because of the aspect. There'd be these tritones, and our ears, at least my ear, we never really get used to hearing tritones, because a lot of classical music is based on avoiding tritones, because that was considered really dissonant in the time, and people were banned, like and like people were not allowed to write tritones in the music in the Baroque period. Like some composers, it was banned. It was considered like the devil's interval. So a lot of music that's like even a diminished chord is really dissonant and really jarring and shocking in the classical period. So to our ears, our 20th century ears may not be that jarring, but back in Mozart's time, this would be really jarring. Hello, Loft Entertainment. Thank you. Welcome to the stream. Does a piece just become muscle memory when you learn it, or can you retranscribe it all the way from the piano? So if you memorize it, some people say like if you really know something from memory, you can write it down from memory, and you can write it down like every note, like every dynamic marking and all the notes from memory. I don't think that's absolutely necessary to do that. I think that's just a little bit too much. At the same time, muscle memory is, as I mentioned this in a previous stream, muscle memory is about, there's a bigger container to that. The bigger container is that how the muscles are taught, how the muscles are learned, because you can teach your muscles a good way, good habits and bad habits, and there's basically actions for every consequence. I mean, there's a consequence for every action. So whatever you teach your muscles, there's going to be a consequence to that. So it's not just simply about like repetition, and then your muscles learn it, because that, if you're not really aware of everything that you're doing, you're practicing, then your muscles may learn something with bad habits, and then you have to spend a lot of energy to unlearn those bad habits. So it's better to focus on how the muscles are taught. So, and for example, like distances between the keys, yes, that's also a little bit part of muscle memory, right? Because you want to know, okay, this is an octave about. So if I place this here as an octave, yes. Let's see if I find a perfect fifth. Maybe it's about right here. Let's see if I place my hand here. Yes, it's a perfect fifth. What about a major seventh from C to B? Let's see. This is about a major seventh here. Correct. Okay, so in a way, okay, yes, that is muscle memory, but in the bigger picture of things, the muscles, we don't just use our hands and fingers to play the piano. We use our entire body. So in that aspect, we have to teach our muscles the correct way. Like if we just play piano like this vertically, then we're going to play piano with really bad habits, right? You don't want to play. Then that's going to be bad habit. But if you teach how to get the energy up and over into the piano, then that's a different aspect, right? That's you're teaching your muscles a different way. So if if you teach the muscles the correct way, it's actually easier to learn it, because then you're going with the music instead of against it. You're not fighting the piano. Hello, Mr. H. Thank you. So here, there are these two noodle markings I wrote here on these 3 notes here. And one way that's to emphasize those notes, and also to contrast between the staccato notes here, because these notes are different texture. So for these tenuto markings, yes, you can use muscle memory. Like, how do you play these tenutos? Well, okay, I'm thinking about tenutos in Beethoven, for example. How did I play the tenutos in Beethoven? Right, I release the key in a certain way. I didn't release the key too quickly, because then that wouldn't be a tenuto. And then there's a certain amount of pressure I put on the keys as well. Pa, 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 that sort of sound, like ta. And then once you have the idea of how you're using the arm and the wrist and the hand, then you're teaching your muscles to how to produce that sound. And that has to do with technique. And technique is, again, going back to the sound image, right? Great music is better than it can be played. So if we have this idealization of how it sounds and we try to reach that level, and that's the first step. If you don't take that first step, then everything else after that is not going to be aligned with that. So it's really important. So actually, if you learn a piece, probably the first step would be to think about why are you attracted to that piece? Why do you want to learn that piece? And how does it sound? How do you want it to sound in your head, the sound image? Because everything that we do on the piano is working towards that. So if you don't have that in mind in the beginning, then it's kind of like you're fumbling around in the dark trying to find where things are. And then if you find them, okay, you found them. But it's, number one, it's an inefficient way. And number two, it's not even in a path. It's not even a narrow path to find the interpretation. Because to find a good interpretation, I believe you have to go along a narrow path, because again, it's about not developing bad habits. If you just go like wander aimlessly, you can develop a lot of bad habits that way. Hello, Unknown Cat. Hello, Unknown the Cat. Hello, Benny. So we have 1 minute left before 10 p.m. So let's see. And this is presto too, but I'm not going to worry about the tempo. As long as I'm just playing the piece at least if I'm within the range of practicality, which means don't learn a piece any 4 times slower than its original tempo, then I'm fine. All right, it's 10 p.m., so I have to stop, but that's the stream for today about memorizing the music. And so I'm not trying to rush things. I'm trying to learn this organically. In the past, when I made YouTube videos, I kind of rushed the memorization part. I try to cram it in my head. And I mean, yes, you can memorize music that way. It's not impossible, but it's not the most organic way, and it may not result in the most musical way, because you're just trying to memorize all these notes quickly, but sometimes the connections that you're making to memorizing it are not as beneficial as they could be. So I'm just working on this consistently. I'm trying to work on it consistently and memorize music that way, and I think that's the direction I'll be taking for my YouTube channel. Like, I do want to develop my YouTube channel, but I'm not going to do it with like a video a day like I did like 8 or 9 years ago. I'm going to invest more time into like the back end of things and learning pieces really as best I can and memorizing it, if that makes sense. And I'm also going to focus more on Mario. In the past, I got like Zelda and Final Fantasy and so forth. I mean, they're not. I enjoy those music as well, but I feel like Mario is. I started with the Mario medley, and I feel like that's where I come from. Like the Mario. I also like Sonic too. Like, I grew up playing Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and 3 and Sonic and Knuckles and Sonic Spinball. My friends played, and I remember playing Sonic Adventure at Tower Records, and so I'm a really big Sonic fan too. So like Sonic and Mario, those I want to focus on those franchises even more. So after when I'm away from the piano, I work on this subconsciously. So that's also another aspect as well, working it subconsciously, and also reflection as well. Like one of my teachers at USC, Stuart Gordon, he mentioned that reflecting on the playing afterwards, that also is important too. And leave reflection, like true and genuine reflection, can give a lot of insights and good and self-improvement to performing or practicing. So self-reflection, like genuine self-reflection, like a lot of the times in school there would be like self-reflection activities, and I felt like these activities I just did to complete the assignment and to get a good grade on it. I felt like if I did those self-reflection assignments in a genuine manner, I would have spent much more time than I would have wanted to on the assignment for practical purposes, because sometimes to really reflect on something, it takes time, and you just want to get the assignment done and go on with the next assignment because there's a lot of homework to do. So sometimes the self-reflection activities that were given in school, like I did them, but it was mainly to get through the assignment. But I think the self-reflection activities now, it's more about really like genuine self-reflection and really trying to find the truth of the music. And so now that I'm out of school, I feel like I can do more self-reflection, and I can do it in a genuine manner and not be concerned about getting what grade I'll get on it and like how much time I have to spend on it, or like other homework I do. I mean, granted, I don't have all day to reflect on just playing this, but it's, I feel like I don't have to, like, the assignments aren't part of like a class curriculum. I can just reflect on my own. And so that's the idea. The self-reflection does play an important role. Hello, Joanna. All right, so that's all end for that's the stream for today. So thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.